Welcome to the Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island. Free-flowing talk with a charismatic, down-to-earth host. Join Dean as he interviews and chats freely with his guests, ranging from superstar athletes to politicians, industry titans, and everyday folk with fascinating life stories. Dean educates, entertains, and most of all, touches people's lives. You're listening to the Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dean Blechman Show. It's March 15th, 24 degrees here in New York, pretty cloudy, and boy, it's been really an up and down winter with hot and cold and snow and rain, and we just got over a nor'easter yesterday. So let's first go over to the United Kingdom. My friend and senior correspondent, Ria Bowe. Good afternoon to you, Ria.
Hello, everybody. Hello, lovely listeners. Welcome to the weekly news roundup on the 15th of March, 2017. Dean and I are just going to catch up on some news that's been going on through the week. Some you will have heard and some you wouldn't have. So if you'd like to start, Dean, and I'll come up behind you from there.
Ria, boy, did we pick the wrong time, Sharon and I, to go to Aruba. Boy, 90 degrees last week in Aruba, and here we just, it's been nothing but cold weather and just an awful nor'easter that we just got over, and we're back in the swing of things with shows. So it's good to hear you again.
Hey, it's good to hear you too as well. Okay, I'll come straight in with one. Because it's the 15th of March today, it's a big day for the US. I'm sure people know about it, but just in case they've missed it, today is the day that the debt ceiling becomes law in the US of $20 trillion. So that's it. It's capped as from today. It's not quite reached 20 trillion, but it's expected to in the next few weeks. And this was put in place by Barack Obama, not Trump. This was put in some time ago, actually, when Barack Obama thought Hillary Clinton would win, I think. So is what happens as your debt hits this ceiling and can go no further. In law, it goes over to the President of the United States to reallocate funds. So it puts the president in a really powerful position. Was what will probably happen and has happened for the last 70, 80 years is there's an application to extend the ceiling on the debt. But just in case Trump gets a hammering on this, Trump didn't do this. But he doesn't have to raise it if he doesn't want to. So I thought I'd let you know that. The bond market today has hit 2.6%, which is the debt market. And they're saying that is pretty much the threshold. And the Fed are raising the rate supposedly this afternoon. So it could have an effect on the bond market. There's a monster there waiting to get out. Whether it will stick a finger out, a hand, an arm, or just leap out, we don't really know. But today is the day when the cap goes on the debt, Dean. Back to you.
Wow. Ria, it surely hasn't been a boring last couple of days here in the United States news. I mean, it just goes on and on. Russia hacking, influencing the presidential election. I mean, Trump's 2005 tax returns. You know, White House allegations about Obama and wiretappings on Trump. I mean, the GOP health plan. And on a good note, the NCAA basketball March Madness. So there's plenty going on. But as far as last week, tipping off last week's news, I thought it was pretty big that South Korea told its president she's out of a job. That last year it came out that South Korea's president, Park Geun-hye, was helping her close friend with no role in the government to cheat major South Korean businesses like Samsung out of tens of millions of dollars. You know, this was sometimes done in return for lots of political favors. Obviously, Park says that she didn't do it, but the Constitutional Court just decided last week, impeach Park, send her packing. And it's just been chaotic in South Korea ever since last week, Ria, with all this news with the president being impeached and is out. So back over to you.
Yeah, I heard some backstory on it, Dean, as well. She's saying the truth will come out and all that kind of stuff. I've got to say that the Japan, North Korea, South Korea, China, that South China Sea, that is still escalating at quite a rapid amount of knots. And you have the US have an armada down there.
You know,
thousands of people down there.
What's amazing, Rhea, is that Park doesn't have political immunity anymore, so prosecutors can charge her with all things like abuse of power.
Yeah, I have heard this. I mean, she pallied up with Obama a little while ago, didn't she? And sort of opened the door for the US into South Korea. So we'll see what happens. Talk on the underground is the CIA black ops. But who really knows? Right, I'm going to move on to another one, Dean. On to Brexit. 'Cause I'm sure it's in your news, but I don't know. Pretty much, it went to the House of Lords. The old fellas, unelected, oligarchy. They said, "Oh, you've got to do two things to amendments to the bill." Comes back into the House of Commons or the House of Commoners. They've overturned it, so Brexit is ready to go, and it could be triggered any day now. So. It's a clean bill now. Now they're just talking deals and things like that. Dean, back to you.
Thank you, Rhea. My second story here on the news happens to do with sports, so there'll be no sports at the end. Right now, there's an event here, and especially for our European listeners and everyone around the world, that there's a phenomenon here in the United States that takes place right now that's called March Madness. It's a phenomenon that grips the national sports psyche from the second week in March through the first week in April. It's really an incredible time of year. It's a great time for people to de-stress from all the negative news that might be going on in mainstream media. And then there's people that do get stressed out because their favorite team maybe does not win. But it's called March Madness, and how it works is that there are 64 women teams and 68 men's teams that compete for the top spot in the annual college basketball tournament. They call this tournament the Big Dance, where conference champs automatically get an invite. The rest are picked by a committee, which looks like how well a team did during the regular season and how its opponents were. You know, some teams get golden tickets, and it just, for the next 3 weeks, it just captures this entire country. It's like the Super Bowl, but for 3 straight weeks. I mean, teams are divided into 4 different regions. There's later rounds of tournaments. Listen to this, my audience and Rhea. As teams begin to get eliminated in college basketball in March Madness in this tournament, you then get down to names that are called the Sweet 16, the Elite 8, and the Final 4, and eventually there's a champion. So everyone is watching. You could watch it on CBS, TNT, TBS, True TV, and people, there are games going on when people are at work here in this country, and what it's like, people cannot stay off their phones. They can't stay off their desktops. So hopefully they can avoid not being terminated, because people are gripped by watching all these games on live streams at NCAA.com. So it's, as you can see from me, even as a fan, it's a very exciting time. To me, this weekly news roundup, this is a big news story. March Madness, the dance, is huge the next 3 weeks until a champion is crowned the first week in April. So very exciting. Back over to you, Rhea.
It sounds very exciting. Hopefully it can put a smile on some people's faces that maybe aren't smiling so much. So that would be a lovely thing. I'll move on to a light one I caught about a week ago. Swedish town floats idea of paid hour off work for parents to have sex. right? Because it's sort of a waning population, they've kind of got to think of something to come on, people, get yourself together. We're a waning population. So they float that past them. I'll move on to another one. This one's quite interesting. News about robots. Microsoft Corp founder Bill Gates made a splash in a recent interview when he suggested that robots should be taxed in order to help humans keep their jobs. Let me get this on here. Right now, the human worker does, say, $50,000 worth of work in a factory. That income is taxed, and the people get the tax and the social security benefits from that. At the moment, if a robot does it, and this is growing a massive amount of knots where people are being replaced, the employer and the state receives no benefits from the robot doing the work. So this has kind of been going on, but it kind of surfaced a bit more about robot tax. That is a definite sign of the times, Dean, where robots are coming for us. Back to you.
Thank you, Rhea. On Monday, the Congressional Budget Office released its diagnosis for the new GOP healthcare plan here in America. I mean, GOP leaders have unwrapped a plan for repealing and replacing Obamacare. Basically, it would get rid of tax penalties for people who don't get health care. It would help people pay for coverage with age and income-based credits, and it would pull back on funding for Medicaid, the program that helps cover low-income and disabled people. I mean, people are saying that this Congressional Budget Office, which really, Rhea, is an independent group of numbers that, among other things, calculates how much a bill would cost the federal government. Lawmakers typically wait for this Congressional Budget Office numbers before moving forward on passing any particular law. The CBO says it would save the federal government about $340 billion over the next decade, and that the number of people without insurance will go up by 24 million in that same period, including 14 million people are expected to lose insurance next year. The main reason for that is people will opt not to get out of healthcare since they won't have to pay that tax penalty anymore, meaning that insurance will be more expensive for a lot of others. I mean, it's just unbelievable what's going on with this, Rhea.
Yeah, I'll come in with a bit of story on that. I think the long and the short of it is, whilst healthcare is a commodity and all the derivatives that go on the commodity, I don't think it'll ever be a situation of some kind of harmony. But while it's a commodity, I don't think it stands a chance, Dean. I think this will be going on throughout the Trump term, however long that is, 2 months, 2 years, I don't know. But it's not going away because it's a commodity and they trade it. So whilst that's going on, I don't think there's not really going to be any change. It's just a load of talk. Right, I'm going to move on to Mexico. This is a different angle on Mexico. If Trump imposes border tax on the Mexican border, Mexico is going to source its corn from elsewhere, along with soybeans and wheat. And Mexico is the biggest buyer of U.S. corn. And again, the U.S. farmers, bless them, they're in trouble. They've got this GMO thing knocking on the door where the crop gets taken over by Monsanto's, this predator crop, and they're losing their money. And now, if this tax goes on to cross the border to pay for this supposed wall, Mexico are going to go elsewhere to source this really basic food product that really made America great as well. So that's something of a concern for the farmers, Dean. Back to you.
Thank you, Rhea. What's a big deal from yesterday is they just keep in mainstream media. The big news today is President Trump's 2005 federal tax returns were released, and it's just between yesterday and today, it's just major mainstream news here in the States. Why is this a big deal? Because Trump was the first presidential candidate in decades not to release his tax returns. There's no law saying that this has to happen, but it's been, a constant ritual since the 70s for all presidential candidates to release their tax returns so that voters can see if candidates have any financial ties that could compromise their role as a president. Trump has said that he couldn't release his taxes because he's being audited by the IRS. But he said after he was elected, the White House said, actually, we're not releasing them. These 05 returns were recently leaked to a journalist and then confirmed by the White House last night before the journalist appeared on MSNBC to talk about them. What's in those tax returns? In 05, Trump made more than $150 million in income. He wrote off more than $100 million in business losses and paid $38 million in federal taxes. That's basically a tax rate of 25%, thanks to an IRS rule called the alternative minimum tax that makes sure wealthy people don't use deductions and credits to get out of paying taxes. I mean, it just goes on and on. People are just saying that the White House says the documents are legitimate and publishing them is illegal, and that supporters of the president say that this shows that Trump is a very successful businessman who just pays a lot in taxes. His critics say Trump needs to release his full tax history so people can see, not just see how much money he has, but where he's coming from. Back over to you, Rhea.
Yeah, I saw a Trump tweet actually saying, does anyone really believe they were found in a mailbox? So I found that quite entertaining. But they're gunning for him. I just think you guys have got years and years of this to come. And there's a bit on the end of this newsreel that I've got to sort of warrant what I've just said. But I'll move on to another one. This is about Germany. Western media in big trouble. Germany to censor press, social media and internet ahead of elections. It must be obvious to anyone watching political events across the Western world, you can see that the media is in big trouble. The availability of multimedia news platforms has accelerated a decline in the 21st century of traditional news events and television. So this is this is kind of looks like it's going to be the way of the globe. If we live in a democracy, questionable, but kind of, censorship is going to be part of it because they're extremely concerned that they're losing the narrative of they want everybody to think what they want them to think, but that is not what's going on. So, but it has come out that Germany is going to censor and censor hard. Back to you, Dean.
Thank you, Rhea. It just goes on and on, never a dull moment here in mainstream news here in America. That yesterday, coming out of the New York Times today, that Sean Spicer, the White House press secretary, said he was very confident that the Justice Department would submit data to the House Intelligence Committee after it missed Monday's deadline to produce evidence of Mr. Trump's claim the House committee is investigating Russian interference in the presidential election. Mr. Trump is extremely confident, he says, that there will be evidence to support his accusation. Spicer said on Tuesday there is no significant reporting about surveillance techniques that have existed through the 2016 election. It's just amazing. It just goes on, and it just continues. That Spicer has said that President Trump's allegation that President Barack Obama spied on him during the 2016 campaign, he said that he's very confident that Trump's claim would eventually be found to be true. I mean, this is just amazing what's going on. I think we're faced with many, many years of this going on, Rhea. Back over to you. Yeah,
I mean, the establishment don't like him. The CIA don't like him. The establishment have the press in their pockets. And if he's taking up a lot of the airtime, that's because someone has chosen for that to be on the news outlet, wherever that is.
If I could just make one other comment, that Spicer's assertion on Tuesday that the allegation would ultimately be proved correct suggested either that the president believes there was enough evidence for himself to be implicated in a serious crime or as an agent of foreign power, or that the Obama administration had flouted that the law to spy on him. Basically, this is unprecedented, Rhea, that you have a sitting president accusing the former president of an accusation, an allegation that, if it turned out to be true, could be a felony charge.
Oh, yeah, it's warming up okay. I was listening to a couple, actually, saying that Obama is pretty much, I mean, they call it the shadow government. It's all a bit dramatic. But that previous people that became or got to higher positions in government that are in there now was of the Obama administration, as it were, and the downward triangle, the pyramid that goes with that. And yeah, there's a lot of talk on the underground, I've got to say, about Obama. I mean, Obama was supposed to be shipping out to Hawaii. Turns out he lives a couple of miles down the road from the White House. And he's shipped different people in and all sorts of stuff going on. So it's kind of just in the weeds, isn't it? And it's not going away. Right, I'll move on to the next one. Here's a bit more news on the white helmets. They're the people that are supposedly the do-gooders in war zones. Swedish Doctors for Human Rights white helmet video showing macabre manipulation of dead children and staged chemical weapon attacks to justify a no-fly zone in Syria. An examination of white helmet video conducted by Swedish medical doctors specialising in a variety of fields, including paediatrics, have revealed that the life-saving procedures seen in the film are incorrect. In fact, threatening or simply fake, including simulated emergency resuscitation techniques being used on already lifeless children to justify a no-fly zone. So the white helmets come under more scrutiny again, questioning, are they the do-gooders that they go in as, or are they another black ops team linked to Blackwater and stuff like that, Dean? So that is definitely heating up. Once you look at the video, you go, that you're trying to bring a body back to life that's already gone, Dean. Back to you.
Thank you, Rhea. I'm going to go on still with the big tournament the next 3 weeks that we have here in college sports, March Madness and what they call the big dance. I just want to mention that on the women's side, you've got the University of Connecticut women that they have won. This year, Rhea, they set a record where the women. University of Connecticut women's basketball team, they've won 100 games in a row. That's unheard of. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, they are one of the most incredible stories in all of sports, not just college sports. The University of Connecticut women basketball team. So I expect no upsets in March Madness on the women's side. I expect University of Connecticut women to bring in a championship. On the men's side, you've got some pretty interesting teams that are number one seeds. You've got teams like Kansas, and you've got Villanova. You've got some great teams there that are there. That'll be there towards the end. I'm picking. My heart is very close to the University of Michigan, and they've been playing incredible basketball the last couple of weeks, and I'm picking them as my Cinderella pick to go all the way to the Final Four and win the national championship in men's college basketball. Rhea, these next 3 weeks, office brackets at work, at home, millions and millions of people are captured by this phenomenon of March Madness that they call the big dance, where the best college basketball players and teams play in this tournament. There are office brackets, home brackets. Everybody does their own brackets, and tremendous amount of gambling that's done here in America. And to see who will be crowned national champions on the men's and women's side. Back over to you.
Oh, yeah, good times, I think. Good times. Okay, here's one. It's a bit old, but you've been away holidaying, haven't you? But I still think there may be some people that haven't heard this. I'd like to know if you've heard this, actually. Democrat super-lobbyist Podesta got paid $170,000 to end U.S. sanctions on Russian bank. Democrat super lobbyist Tony Podesta was paid $170,000 over a 6-month period last year to represent Sberbank, one of Russia's largest banks, seeking to end one of Obama's administration economic sanctions against the country. Have you heard that on the mainstream?
We've heard it a little bit over here, Rhea.
Okay, yeah, I thought so. I got it from your side. And a quick one, it was a post in the New York Times with... Today we've got the cap going on of the US debt. We've got the supposed Fed rate hikes, wrong way around, rate hike. And the story will be whether they're going to do it again, and the bond market hitting 2.6%, which is probably where it could crack. But there was an article in the New York Times saying, be cautious because it's not all what it looks like. So be careful with what you're doing. Get some advice on your investments if you're in that kind of business. Have you got any more stories, Dean?
I have no more stories, Rhea. Anything else on your end?
Yeah, I've got a couple of bits here. Talk on the net, talk below the surface. A major mainstream media campaign by the mainstream media of character assassination on Trump, Putin and Assange is due to be launched. Now, I already thought there was one on Trump and Putin and Russia, maybe less so Assange, but they're saying they're about to ramp it up to another level. And there's a lot of people talking about this as it's almost like a bigger move in the chess game, as it were, to tear these people down and discredit them in front of the Americans' eyes. So this is organised by the corporates, which are obviously running the mainstream news. I've got one more to go. News on Bitcoin. Bitcoin on the week is up 7.9% and up on the month 28.7%. So Bitcoin is still on a charge north, Dean. Wow. So that's it from the UK today, guys. Today's a beautiful day. It's like summer in the UK. We're about 65, 70 Fahrenheit. Pretty much full blue skies. So it's not always drizzly in the UK, Dean.
Well, I want to thank you, Rhea, very much for this great weekly news roundup. And until next week, I would like to thank all our listeners that are with us today for being with us. And from all of us at the Dean Blechman Show, everybody have a great day. Bye-bye now.
You've been listening to the Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island, New York. From all of us here, we'd like to thank you for tuning in. We look forward to hearing your comments via Facebook, Twitter, Skype, and email. And don't forget, you can visit the webpage anytime for the up-and-coming guest list. From all of us here, have a good evening.